I heard that sentence before I even opened my eyes. A familiar male voice stood right beside my hospital bed, dropping each word like cold metal. That child is not my son's. Don't expect me to let him carry the Caldwell name. Then another voice, female, sharp, and colder than the air conditioning in the maternity room. A woman like her is not worthy of being the mother of our grandchild. The white ceiling light washed straight into my eyes when I finally blinked awake. It took a few seconds for the room to make sense, and for the faces in front of me to click into place. My name is Mira Lawson, 27, a small-town librarian. People say I'm gentle, quiet, soft like the sound of a page turning. But that morning, staring at the three faces lined up beside my bed, I knew silence wasn't going to protect me anymore. Dorian, my husband, Evelyn, his mother, Mia, his sister. They stood in a row like three shadows ready to judge me. Dorian looked at the baby in my arms for exactly one breath. His expression changed. Not surprise, not concern, but hatred. A cold, freezing kind of hatred that made the entire room feel smaller. I'm not signing anything. This baby is not a Caldwell. My throat tightened. I pulled the baby closer, feeling his tiny heart beating weakly against my chest. Dorian, what are you talking about? He's our son. He bent down close enough that I could feel his breath, his voice low but sharp like a blade. You think everyone's stupid? I'm not raising another man's child. Evelyn crossed her arms, her eyes sliding over me like I was something dirty stuck on her shoe. I told him from the start. He should have never married a girl from your kind of background. Mia scoffed. Look at him. He doesn't look like anyone in our family. The baby flinched and let out a loud, piercing cry. That cry went straight through my bones. The door burst open. Doctor Reuben walked in, tension written all over his face. Mira needs rest, he said. And you, Dorian, I need to speak with you privately. I don't need to hear anything, Dorian snapped. I want the hospital to void that temporary birth certificate. The doctor inhaled slowly. When he spoke again, his voice had the weight of breaking glass. We found something unusual in the baby's genetic markers. He doesn't match you. And he doesn't fully match Mira either. My entire body turned to stone. I've only ever been with my husband. My voice shook like water in a glass. The doctor gave me the look of a man trying to tell the truth no one wants to hear. The biological father is very likely someone extremely close, within the Caldwell family. It felt like the oxygen was sucked out of the room. Dorian went pale. Evelyn froze. Mia stood still like a statue. And me? I dropped straight into a dark corner of my own memory. The clink of a glass, a strange smell, a sudden wave of dizziness down my spine, and the door of consciousness slamming shut. I remembered nothing after that. And that was the detail that made my heart stop. I'll run the test again, the doctor said. But Mira, you need to prepare yourself. This isn't a system error. I shook my head, tears falling onto my baby's cheek as he drifted back to sleep from exhaustion. No, doctor, there's no way. Please, check again, please. But Dorian didn't stay to hear anything else. He turned around. Evelyn followed. Mia slammed the door hard enough to make the wall shake. The room shrank back to its real size, small, cold, and filled with the space they had just abandoned. I held my baby against my chest, trying to keep both of us warm, not because they humiliated me, not because my husband walked away at the weakest moment of my life, but because something even darker was beginning to show its face. If Dorian wasn't the father, if my own genetic match wasn't complete, if that very close person was a Caldwell, then it meant Something had been done to me on the night my memory went black. My hands trembled so violently, I was afraid I might drop them, and I didn't know that what had just happened was only the surface of a nightmare, years in the making. One controlled by people far more dangerous than anyone standing in that room. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. This story is heavy, but I hope it reaches someone out there, someone who's ever been forced into silence like I was. If you're listening from somewhere tonight, tell me the city you're watching from, and if you want to keep going with me, hit like and subscribe, so I know I'm not telling this story alone. I don't know how long I sat there after the door slammed shut. All I heard was the monitor beside me, beep, beep, beep. So loud it felt like every beat was counting down to something terrible. The baby drifted back to sleep, his breaths thin as thread. I brushed my fingers across his forehead, my hands still shaking uncontrollably. The chill in my bones wasn't from the air conditioning. It was from the truth Dr. Rubin had just dropped. Truth that felt like someone was peeling the skin off me, layer by layer. I tried to breathe, but my lungs felt tied in knots. The door opened again. This time, Dr. Rubin stepped in alone. He pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down, silent at first. He looked at me, then at the baby, then at the folder in his hands, holding it like it was the last solid thing in the room. Mira, we need to talk privately. I nodded, not trusting my voice to hold up. He glanced around, shut the door, and pulled the small curtain over the glass window like he was scared someone might be watching. Doctor, what is this? I don't remember anything. I don't even understand how. He placed a hand over mine. His voice dropped soft, but sharp like a scalpel. Mira, I don't think you understand how serious this is. My heart clenched. We ran the second test right after the Caldwells left, he said. The results are identical to the first. There's no error. I swallowed the rising terror swelling in my chest. So, that means... He looked straight into my eyes, and I knew he was about to say what no one wants to hear. It means the baby is not Dorian's, and it is not the result of anything voluntary on your part. My stomach flipped. The air thickened. My pulse hammered up my throat. Doctor, My voice broke. He continued, slow enough that every word felt like a cut. This strongly suggests you were drugged, lost consciousness, and assaulted. A sharp crack echoed inside my head. I gripped the side of the bed like I was falling into a bottomless pit. I heard myself speak in a voice that didn't even sound like mine. No, that's impossible. I've only ever been with Dorian. Do you remember anything about that night? He asked, gently. I shut my eyes. Bits of memory flickered. Dorian handing me a glass of red wine. The warm yellow light in our living room. A sudden dizziness shooting down my spine. The sound of a door opening behind me. And then darkness swallowing everything whole. I opened my eyes. A little, but nothing clear. Just the wine. Then I collapsed. After that, nothing. The doctor nodded slowly. That's why I want you to speak to an attorney, and possibly the police. My body jolted. No. The Caldwell family. They won't let this go. He let out a long, tired breath, the kind you hear from a man who has seen too much ugliness in the world. Mira, you don't have the luxury of staying quiet. If no one speaks for you, they will bury you before you even realize what's happening. A shiver moved down my spine. I looked at the baby sleeping in my arms. That tiny face hadn't done anything wrong. However he came into this world, he was mine. But if the truth about who assaulted me ever came out, I couldn't even imagine how the Caldwells would react. Doctor, who did this to me? My voice trembled like a breath. He shook his head. I can't give you a name yet, but the genetic markers confirm one thing. The man is a direct blood relative of the Caldwell family. I felt my blood freeze. Direct blood, meaning Dorian's father, Dorian's brother, or Dorian himself. No, no! But the chopped up memory of that night, Dorian's strange expression the next morning, the way he avoided my eyes every time I mentioned collapsing. It all pushed me toward a conclusion I was too scared to name. My voice barely made it out. Doctor, what am I supposed to do now? He squeezed my hand gently.
You need protection, and you need to leave this hospital before they come back.
It felt like he had opened a door straight into a storm. Leave? Right now?
Not to run, he said. To stay safe. Families like the Caldwells, they don't let scandals touch their name. You and this baby, you're a threat.
I leaned back against the wall, dragging in a shaky breath. My life, just a few hours ago, was a simple, ordinary page, and now someone had ripped it into pieces. Doctor, I don't have anyone. My voice cracked like glass. He looked at me, his eyes steady in a way that forced me to lift my head.
You have me, he said, and you have the truth.
A simple sentence, but it pierced through the heavy darkness hanging over me. I looked down at my baby, tiny, fragile, holding on to me with every ounce of life he had. Can the truth protect us? I whispered. Dr. Rubin nodded, if you're willing to stand up for it. That afternoon, I signed the request for a third DNA test proof no one could deny. The doctor arranged for a trusted night shift nurse to watch over me. He promised he'd return the moment the results came in. I lay in bed, watching my son sleep, feeling so hollow it was like my body was just an empty shell. But something else stirred inside me. A small spark, like the faint glow leaking through a crack in a dark room. I whispered into my baby's ear. You came to me in the cruelest way, but I won't let anyone take you from me. What I didn't know was that this small spark would grow into a flame, strong enough to burn down the Caldwell empire in the months to come. But right now I had only one choice: protect my child and uncover the truth. That night, when the hospital finally sank into silence, I couldn't sleep, not even when my eyes burned from exhaustion. Every small sound in the hallway made me jump, as if the door could burst open any second and the Caldwell family would storm in again, dragging their cruelty behind them. Around 3 a.m, the night nurse brought me a thin envelope. Dr. Rubin asked me to give you this, she whispered. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a document confirming the hospital would seal all genetic test records. No access permitted except for me and Dr. Rubin. And at the bottom, in his handwriting, was a single line. Stay calm. Prepare for the worst. I folded the paper and tucked it under my pillow as if it were the only protection I had left. I didn't know that just a few hours later, the worst was already waiting outside my hospital door. When the sun slid through the window that morning, I was told I had to vacate my room because someone else needed the bed. I barely had time to protest before the nurse leaned in and whispered, Mira, I think they're trying to pressure you. You should leave. They who? I whispered back, though the answer was as clear as a fingerprint on glass. She only shrugged, as if saying it out loud might put her job at risk. I held my baby close and stepped into the hallway, and at the end of it stood the one person I feared most, Evelyn Caldwell. She stood straight, her makeup cold and flawless like frost on a luxury car window. Oh, she said, her voice sweet in the way artificial sugar is sweet. So you finally decided to come out. I tightened my hold on the baby without thinking. What do you want? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I want you gone from my son's life, she replied, eyes devoid of warmth. And I want you to understand that this child, her gaze slid toward the baby sleeping in my arms, will never carry anything connected to our family name. I shook my head. You don't get to decide that. She gave a small, cruel smile. Oh, but you don't understand. The Caldwells always decide the fate of anyone who tries to cling to our name. I opened my mouth to answer, but two men in black suits stepped forward behind her, private security. They stood there like two living doors blocking every exit. Evelyn continued, "I've already spoken to the hospital. We reject all responsibility. The temporary birth certificate has been removed, and starting today, you are banned from every facility under the Caldwell Foundation." My mouth went dry. She wasn't just stripping my rights. She was stripping my baby's access to medical care. A cold tremor ran down my legs. "You're throwing me out. Now. Right now," she said, not a hint of hesitation. "And if you're smart, you won't come back looking for my son." I looked around, praying Dr. Rubin would appear, but he wasn't there. I walked past them one step at a time, every step feeling like I was walking on broken glass. No one said another word, but I felt their eyes on my back like 3 blades. Outside, the morning wind hit my face like ice. I stood at the curb, holding my baby, having no idea where to go. I had imagined something very different. I imagined Dorian coming to pick us up, bringing us home, to the room I painted pale blue just 3 months ago. But now, all of that felt erased, like chalk wiped clean off a blackboard. I called a taxi. When the driver asked where to go, all I could manage was home, please. But the moment the car turned into our neighborhood, my stomach dropped. The front door of our house was shut, and on the porch, 3 suitcases, my suitcases, lined up neatly like trash left out for collection. The driver looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Are you sure this is where you want to get out?" I didn't answer. I stepped out with a baby in my arms. The house I had lived in for 2 years suddenly felt foreign. Every step, every flower pot, every piece of that porch seemed to reject me. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I rang again. Nothing. On the 3rd try, Dorian's voice came from behind the door, cold, sharp, emotionless. "Mira, leave." My breath caught. What are you doing? "I just gave birth, our child." "Don't call him that," he snapped. "You know the truth now." "But I didn't do anything." "You did enough," he said. "I've signed the separation and cut off financial support. This isn't your home anymore." I gripped the railing, feeling the ground tilt beneath me. "You're throwing me out? Like this?" There was the sound of a lock turning. The door cracked open. Dorian didn't look at me. He only looked at the baby, with disgust, as if I was holding some strange creature he wanted nothing to do with. "I won't say it again," he said. "Go, before I call security." The door slammed so hard the wall shook. I stood there, holding my child, 3 suitcases behind me, the morning sun brushing across my face like a cruel joke. For one moment, I thought I would collapse on that porch and never get back up. But the baby in my arms started crying, and that cry pulled me back into my body. I took a long breath, lifted the suitcases, and turned away. Every step I took felt like tearing off another piece of the life I used to have. I didn't know where to go. No home, no money, no family. Friends? A handful, each drowning in their own lives. I walked toward town, the wind stinging my eyes until I had to shut them. The baby whimpered inside his blanket. Each sound sliced through me. I was carrying my entire life in my arms, and I had no clue where to begin again. Just when my knees felt like they would give out, a small blue car pulled over. The window rolled down. A woman with silver-brown hair leaned out, eyes wide with worry. "Mira? Is that you?" I blinked, needing a few seconds to recognize her. Mrs. Inez, my old neighbor, the one who brought homemade pastries on holidays, the only person who ever asked if I was okay when she heard shouting from my house one summer night. I didn't even get a word out before she opened the passenger door. "Get in, sweetheart. You can't be out here like this." And I broke. Not because I was weak, but because for the first time in months, someone looked at me like I was human. I climbed into the seat with my baby, shutting the door behind me, like I had just escaped a storm. She placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "It's all right, honey. You cry if you need to. We'll figure this out." And right then, I realized I had truly hit rock bottom. But sometimes, rock bottom is the only place solid enough to start climbing back up. Mrs. Inez drove me to her small house on the edge of town, an old place with dark shingles and a porch that curved like an elderly spine. Yet somehow, the moment I stepped inside, I felt myself breathe easier. The faint smell of cinnamon and baked apples hung in the air. The baby curled into my chest and slept a little deeper. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You stay here for as long as you need." Her voice tightened my throat. All I could do was lower my head and whisper, "Thank you." That afternoon, while I changed the baby's diaper and rocked him with the only warmth I had left, she set a bowl of hot chicken soup beside me. I ate slowly, each spoonful pulling me back into feeling like a person again, not a discarded object thrown out of my own home. But that tiny bubble of peace didn't last. Near dusk, as I stepped onto the porch to get some fresh air, Mrs. Inez walked out holding a small, battered box she had just retrieved from the roadside mailbox. "This came for you," she said quietly, as if afraid of it. I frowned. "From who?" "No name." I opened the box. Inside was a brown envelope, the kind used for internal documents. No return address, no markings, just 4 handwritten words. "For Mira. Read alone." A cold wave rushed down my spine. I held the baby tight and went into the small guest room she'd given me. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside wasn't legal paperwork, not a threat, not a demand, but a single white sheet of paper with 2 short lines. 2 lines that stopped my heart. He wasn't the only one watching you. And he wasn't the only one in the house that night. I stared at the uneven handwriting, as if written in a hurry, or by someone whose hand shook from fear. Not just one man. I heard the rush of my own blood pounding in my ears. I read it again. He wasn't the only one watching you. My throat tightened so hard I could barely swallow. The man who assaulted me might not have been alone. And if there was another one, then who? Someone from the Caldwell family, someone present in the house that night. I closed my eyes, trying to drag pieces of memory from the dark. Yellow light, muffled voices, the smell of wine, a small laugh behind me, and the cold hand closing over mine. Or was that just my mind trying to fill in the emptiness? I didn't know anymore. Everything was shattered glass, and every time I tried to pick up a piece, it cut deeper. I read the second line, and he wasn't the only one in the house that night. My heart clenched painfully. Who was in the house? Dorian. His father, Victor Caldwell. His brother, Julian. Mia. And a distant cousin I had only met twice, Graham. Which one of them had put their hands on me? My hands shook so hard I had to set the letter down. But that anonymous letter wasn't the last blow of the day. Around 9 p.m., the landline phone in the living room rang. Mrs. Inez answered, then hurried in and handed it to me. "Mira, the hospital called. It's Dr. Rubin." I pressed the phone to my ear, my stomach tightening. "Mira," he said, his voice exhausted. "I just reviewed the baby's condition. There's something you need to know immediately." I sat down, gripping the receiver. "What is it, doctor?" "We found signs of a genetic disorder.
It's manageable with monitoring, but it requires more testing. And most importantly, it only appears when combined with genes from a very specific family line. My voice dropped to a whisper. Which family line? He paused, a long, heavy pause that made my heartbeat slam against my ribs. The Caldwell line. I closed my eyes as tears spilled out. So that means... It means the test results are accurate. No possibility of error. I felt all the air leave my lungs. And Mira, this condition doesn't appear naturally. It further confirms you were subjected to something completely against your will. A tremor ran through me and a broken sob escaped my throat. Doctor, is my baby going to be okay? We'll monitor him closely, but you must bring him to his appointments. And Mira, you cannot let the Caldwells know this. You must not. Why? My voice shook. He answered instantly, no hesitation, because they will do anything to erase the evidence. His words hit me like a lightning bolt. Try to rest, Mira. He added softly, I'll find a way to get the appointment details to you tomorrow. And Mira? His tone dropped even lower. Don't trust anyone except Mrs. Inez. The line clicked. I sat there frozen, the baby rising and falling gently against my chest. I pulled him closer, kissed his warm forehead, and felt the weight of a secret that could bring down an entire powerful family and could crush me if they found out. The next morning, as I tossed a bag of used diapers into the bin outside, I saw it. A black car parked down the street. Tinted windows, engine running. No one getting out. I slowed my steps, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. Someone was watching, and they weren't even hiding it. I hurried back into the house and locked the door. Mrs. Inez came from the kitchen and saw my face go pale. What is it, honey? There's someone out there. She pulled the curtain aside, looked, then pressed her lips together. That's a Caldwell car, she whispered. You need to be extremely careful. My legs almost gave out beneath me. The Caldwells didn't just want me gone. They were tracking every breath I took. The anonymous letter, the genetic disorder, the black car, the threats at the hospital, all of it pointed in one direction, one truth I could no longer run from. I had been assaulted, not by a stranger, but by someone I had eaten dinner with, someone who shared last names and family blood. And the people who knew the truth were terrified enough to send the letter from the shadows. That night, as I rocked the baby to sleep with the lullaby my mother used to hum, Mrs. Inez came in with a cup of hot tea. She sat on the edge of the bed and placed a steady hand on my back. Mira, you can't keep running. You have to find the truth, not just for you, but for this little one too. I nodded, not because I was brave, but because I had no other choice. I looked at my baby's tiny hand curled around my finger, and in that moment, something hardened inside me, a decision. I would find out who did this, and I would not let the Caldwells bury it. No more silence. Silence was the thing that killed me first. It took me almost an hour to calm Kalen after his last crying spell. He was only a few days old, but his cries cut straight through me like a blade. I knew he wasn't hungry. He wasn't cold. He was just feeling the storm leaking out of me, the fear I was trying to hide under a thin layer of fake calm. Mrs. Inez rested a hand on my shoulder. You need to eat something, Mira. I shook my head. I can't get anything down. I knew I needed to be strong, to stay clear-headed, But my mind was spinning. My stomach twisted with anxiety, and my heart felt like it had slipped into a bottomless hole. The anonymous note still lay on the table, like a dried bloodstain no one could scrub away. He wasn't the only one watching you. Each word felt alive, wrapping around my throat. I had just laid Kaylin in his makeshift crib when the phone rang. Mrs. Inez answered, then handed it to me. "Mira, it's Dr. Rubin." I gripped the receiver. My whole body pulled tight like a string about to snap.
"Mira," he said, "I've arranged for you to get a second DNA test done this morning. It won't go through any Caldwell system. I'm using an independent lab owned by a friend, completely off the record."
"When?"
My voice was shaking. "In the next 2 hours. You need to get there before the Caldwells realize the file has been pulled." I glanced toward the window. The black car was still there. They'd been parked since last night.
"How am I supposed to get out?" I whispered.
"I'm sending a nurse I trust to pick you up," he said. "All you need to do is be ready."
When I hung up, my hands were still trembling. Mrs. Inez nodded slowly.
"Go, honey. There's no other way now."
2 hours later, an old Honda pulled up outside. The woman who stepped out wore scrubs, but not from any Caldwell facility. "Are you Mira?" she asked quietly, her eyes flicking toward the black car. "Yes? Then we need to move, fast. I don't know how long we've got." I wrapped Kaylin tighter in his blanket, held him close to my chest, and hurried to the car. The wind hit my face like it wanted to erase me. As soon as we pulled away, I looked in the side mirror and saw what I had been dreading. The black car's engine roared to life and followed. The nurse saw it too. "I'll take the back roads," she said, turning the wheel hard enough that I grabbed onto Kaylin with both arms. We cut through streets I'd never seen before, narrow dirt lanes, back alleys, and forgotten corners of town. Eventually, the black car disappeared. I exhaled, but the tension stayed, sitting in my chest like a stone. "Do the Caldwells always do this?" the nurse asked softly. I nodded. "They want me gone." She pressed her lips together. "Only guilty people fear the truth," she said. "You are not the guilty one, Mira." I wasn't sure I believed that, but I wanted to. The lab was tucked behind an old toll booth building with no sign and no name. A middle-aged man opened the door. "Ms. Mira Lawson, come in, quickly." I carried Kaylin inside. The smell of antiseptic hit me and set my nerves on edge. "We'll run a full DNA panel," he explained. "Samples from you and the baby. You'll have the results in 24 hours. 24 hours. One day that felt longer than an entire lifetime. I signed the paperwork with a shaking hand. Kaylin lay sleeping in the small bassinet they'd set up for him. When they drew my blood, I stared out the window. The black car wasn't there, but the feeling of being watched clung to me. Sometimes thin, sometimes thick like fog, never gone. When they finished, the man walked us to a back door to avoid any attention. "Do you need anything else?" he asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I needed a family, a home, a shoulder to lean on. But those things, for me now, felt as distant as the night skyline of New York I used to dream about as a broke college student. "I'm fine," I lied, even though I felt hollow. He rested a hand on my shoulder. "You're not fine," he said gently, "but you will be. When the truth is on your side, Mira, everyone who stands against you eventually falls." I swallowed that sentence like medicine, not because I felt strong, but because I had no choice except to believe it. By the time we got back to Mrs. Inez's house, the sky was already dimming. The black car was gone, but the fear had learned my name and refused to leave. I stepped inside, laid Kaylin down, and that's when Mrs. Inez handed me another envelope. "Mira, you got more mail." I stared at it. Smaller than the last one, no return address, just my name scribbled quickly on the front. "Do you think you should open it now?" she asked. I nodded, pressing a hand over my racing heart. Inside was a small slip of paper and a single line: "Ask Evelyn about the basement." The back of my neck went numb. The basement? Which basement? The Caldwell estate? Victor Caldwell's house? Or the basement in the very house I had been living in? I stared at the words so long they seemed to blur. Someone was trying to lead me to the truth, but the truth was dangerous enough that they didn't dare sign their name. I hadn't even folded the note yet when my phone buzzed. "Unknown number," I answered. "Mira Lawson?" A woman's voice, low, sharp, but not harsh like Evelyn's. "Yes, this is Mira." "My name is Jade Merritt. I'm an attorney. I was asked by someone, who prefers to stay anonymous, to help you. I know about the tests and the anonymous letters." My grip on the phone tightened. They know everything?" "I need to meet with you," Jade said. "Tonight, if possible, before the Caldwells move first." My breath caught. Why are they doing this to me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Jade answered, slicing through the quiet. "Because they know that if the truth comes out, that entire family crumbles. And Mira, you're not just the victim of one man. You're a threat to all of them." I grabbed the edge of Kaylin's crib like it was the last solid thing in the room. "We'll start by protecting the baby," Jade continued. "And I'll help you track down the biological father. But you need to prepare yourself for this. The man responsible isn't just someone you know. He's someone who walked into your home like he belonged there." I closed my eyes. Tears slid down my fingers. Kaylin shifted slightly in his sleep, as if his tiny body knew I was about to walk into something even crueler than what I'd already faced. Then Jade delivered the line that sent ice through every vein. "And Mira, I don't think the father is the man you're suspecting. It's worse than that." I set the phone down, feeling like someone had scooped out the inside of my chest. On the table lay the tiny slip of paper. "Ask Evelyn about the basement." In the crib lay a baby carrying the blood of one of those men. Outside, the darkness was thickening, and inside my ribcage, a storm I wasn't sure would survive was starting to build. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I couldn't stop now. Not when I was finally holding the first loose thread of the whole truth. I met Jade just as the sky slipped into darkness, carrying Kaylin wrapped tight against my chest. We chose a cafe tucked behind a laundromat, the kind of place no one from the Caldwell family would ever step foot in. Small, dim amber lights, a faint burnt coffee smell hanging in the air. A place where secrets could dissolve before they ever reached the door. Jade Merritt looked at me with the eyes of someone who's dealt with too many victims. Not pitying eyes, but ones that understood. "Do you have the letter?" I nodded and placed the small slip of paper on the table. "Ask Evelyn about the basement." Jade read it once, then let out a quiet laugh. Not amused, but the tired kind of laugh you make when you've seen the shadow of a monster, and you're no longer afraid to name it. "I have a feeling," she said, "that basement holds more than old furniture." My throat tightened. I pulled Kaylin closer without realizing it. "You think, what exactly is down there?" Jade leaned back, her voice dropping low. "Evidence, or a person." A cold current ran straight through my spine. "Person? What do you mean?" Jade's eyes sharpened. "Do you know anyone named Ava?" My blood froze. Ava, the young woman who used to work as a housekeeper in the Caldwell's home. She disappeared just 2 months after I moved in. No explanation, no search, just gone. "I met her a few times," I murmured, "but they told me she quit." Jade shook her head slowly. "No, she didn't quit. She vanished." My breath stalled. Jade slid a thin file across the table. "Ava Reynolds, private psychiatric facility. Records say delusions, agitation, hallucinations, but..."
She flipped to the last page. Every document was signed by a doctor funded by Victor Caldwell. The room tilted. I had to grip the table to steady myself. Why? Why would he do that? Jade met my eyes directly. Because Ava went to the police. She reported Victor for assault, and no one believed her, because no one dared believe her. I sat there, my heartbeat refusing to find a rhythm. The tiny cafe fell into a thick silence. Only the sound of Kalen's soft breathing under his blanket kept me upright. Do you think? My voice shook like dry leaves. There's a chance the same thing happened to me? Jade didn't answer right away. She studied me, as if deciding whether the truth would shatter me or set me free. Mira, do you remember that night you said you felt dizzy? The night everything went blurry after that strange smell of wine. I nodded. My heartbeat slowed, heavy, preparing for the fall. Who was in the house that night? I closed my eyes. Faces, voices, soft laughter, expensive perfume thick in the air, and Victor's eyes on me, while Dorian walked away to answer a call. I never even considered. I stammered. Jade set the file aside and pulled out a USB drive. You need to consider it now. Because Mira, I have this. I stared at the USB, the way someone stares at a blade with their own reflection on it. What's on it? A recording, Jade said. No date, no name, but I believe it's connected to Ava. And to you. A pressure closed around my chest as Jade plugged in the USB. She played the file. Static. Then, a woman's voice tore through the speakers. No, don't. I don't want. I don't. I shot up from my seat so fast the table rattled. Stop, I shouted, breath shaking uncontrollably. Jade paused the file, but that voice stayed lodged in my skull. The trembling, the fear, the desperation. It was my voice. I nearly lost my balance and had to lean against the wall. Jade stood beside me, hands steady in my shoulders. Mira, I'm sorry, but you needed to hear it. I shook my head, tears falling without permission. Why don't I remember? Why do I only remember my chest tightening and my body feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds? Jade spoke slowly, each word reopening something inside me. Because you weren't awake, Mira. You were drugged. My knees gave out, and I collapsed into the chair. A black hole I had avoided for months suddenly opened wide beneath me. Mira, Jade said gently, you have to confront Evelyn. The one who holds more secrets in that family isn't Victor. It's his wife. Evelyn, the woman who always looked at me like a stain on the tablecloth, who never let me near the wine cellar or the basement, or downstairs at all unless someone else was there. I wiped my cheeks and forced myself to breathe. If Evelyn knew, why would she stay quiet? Jade didn't hesitate. Because silence is the only way to survive in the Caldwell house. That night, back at Mrs. Inez's home, I rocked Kalen slowly until he fell asleep. The warm yellow lamp lit his tiny face, so peaceful it hurt to look at. You were born from a darkness I never chose, I whispered. But you won't grow up in it. I laid him down and turned back to the table. Jade's USB sat there like a small loaded bomb. I knew I couldn't let fear decide my next step. And that's when my phone buzzed. A text message. 2 words. Basement, tonight. From an unknown number. My skin prickled. No one knew where I was. No one except Jade. And one other person who had watched me leave that house more than once. Evelyn Caldwell. I stood up. My legs shook. The window rattled slightly. Cold air slipped through the crack, and I knew I was about to walk into the very darkness I had been running from. No more choices. Not if I wanted to save my child. Not if I wanted the truth. I lifted Kaylin, kissed his soft cheek.
"I'll come back," I whispered, but not as the weak woman who left that hospital. I put on my thin jacket and stepped outside. The Atlanta night swallowed me whole, and deep down, I knew, from this moment forward, my life would never look the same. I left Mrs. Inez's small house with my heart beating off rhythm and my breathing shorter than usual. The text, "Basement tonight," still glowed on my phone screen like a stain that wouldn't wash off. Atlanta at night has a kind of silence where you can hear your own fear. I walked to the meeting point Jade had chosen. She was already there, waiting in an old sedan with the headlights off, like part of the darkness itself. "I'm going with you," Jade said the moment I opened the door. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a decision, made by someone who understood exactly how dangerous this was. We drove in silence, streetlights sliding over the windshield like streaks of cold metal. "Do you really think Evelyn sent that text?" I finally asked. "I think Evelyn wants to say something, but can't show her face," Jade replied. "In that family, the truth is the most dangerous thing in the room." I swallowed hard. "What if it's a trap?" Jade glanced at me, her eyes sharp enough that I couldn't look away. "Mira, you're already inside a trap. From the moment you gave birth to Kaylin, everything has been a trap." She wasn't wrong. We pulled up in front of Caldwell Estate. The mansion loomed in the dark like a sleeping animal, the kind that could wake at the slightest sound and swallow you whole. The gate was half open, no guards, no cars, an absence that felt wrong. "Let's go," Jade said. We followed a narrow side path to the basement door, the gray wooden door Evelyn had warned me away from more times than I could count. "Do not go down there, ever." Back then, I thought she was just afraid I'd ruin some expensive wine. Now I knew she was afraid I'd find the truth. The door was ajar. Jade flicked on a flashlight, and I followed that beam down the cold concrete steps. The air smelled like damp walls and old metal, like a room where people had cried and no one ever came. At the bottom, I saw an overturned wooden chair, a few discarded sheets, and something that made my whole body go numb, a silver necklace, the kind Ava always wore. I picked it up. My hand shook so badly the chain rattled. "She was here," I whispered. "Not just here." A voice cut through the dark. "She was kept here." I spun around. Evelyn Caldwell stood in the shadow at the bottom of the stairs. Evelyn no longer looked like the polished, icy woman I knew. Under Jay's flashlight, her face looked gray, drawn, and exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in a long time. She walked down slowly. "I don't have much time," Evelyn said. "Victor is with some business partners. He could be back any minute." Jade shifted slightly, putting herself between us. "Then talk," she said. Evelyn took a breath, her hands trembling, as if even her bones were afraid of the words she was about to say. "I know what he did to you," she said, looking at me. Her voice was so soft, it almost vanished in the air. "I know, because I watched it happen to Ava." The air in the basement thickened, like there were 100 ghosts listening. "Why did you stay quiet?" Jade asked, her voice sharp as steel. Evelyn's mouth twisted into something caught between a smile and pain. "Because I was raised to be quiet," she said. "I was taught that. My entire existence depended on protecting the Caldwell name, no matter the cost. And when I married into this family, Victor made it clear that if I opened my mouth," she stopped, eyes glassy, "he would destroy everything I loved." I choked back a breath. "And Ava?" I asked. Evelyn broke. "He drugged her, then called her insane." she whispered. I couldn't save her. I couldn't save any of them. She looked at me, then with a regret I had never seen in 4 years of knowing her. But you, Mira, her voice weakened. You still have a chance to get out. You and that baby, before he decides your son is a threat. I gripped Ava's necklace like it was her hand reaching out of the dark. Did you send me the letters? I asked. No, I didn't dare. But I know who did. Her eyes lowered. Osley, my youngest son. My heart clenched. Osley, the quiet boy who always asked how I was in the mornings. He knew, and he tried to help. Before I could say anything else, Jade's phone buzzed. The screen lit up with one word. Dorian. I froze. Why was he calling Jade? She answered. Her face changed immediately. Victor's on his way home, Jade said quickly. We need to go, now. We hurried out of the basement and headed for the car. Evelyn stayed on the last step, watching us with a look that felt like an apology she couldn't bring herself to say out loud. Jade's car tore down the driveway. The mansion shrank in the rearview mirror. Only when we'd passed through the thin line of trees surrounding Caldwell Estate did Jade speak. Dorian's at his father's house, she said. He's confronting Victor tonight. My heart skipped. Dorian? She nodded. He's heard the recording, and she inhaled deeply. He says he wants the truth from his father's mouth. Something twisted inside my chest, a tangled knot of grief, anger, and something that almost felt like a distorted kind of hope. I didn't know what Dorian wanted. I didn't know if he was doing this for me or for himself. But I did know one thing, that confrontation had to happen. About an hour later, my phone rang. Dorian. His voice sounded rough and broken, like he'd been fighting with himself. Mira, I need to see you, right now. Jade gestured for me to put it on speaker. I just spoke with him, Dorian said. Mira, you were right. About everything. My hand tightened so hard my nails dug into my skin. What did he say? I asked. Dorian's answer made the world tilt. He said it was just a lesson for me, to teach me not to trust women. He said a woman like you would make me weak. Dorian's voice dropped. He said you were a tool. That's the word he used. None of those words belonged to any kind of human father. They sounded like something a demon would say, wearing a man's face. A broken sound came out of me. Not quite a sob, not quite a scream. Something from deeper than my chest. Mira, Dorian whispered. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. What exactly are you sorry for? My voice was raw. For not protecting you, he said. For believing him instead of the woman sleeping beside me. For walking away when you needed me most. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. Each breath felt like it was scraping my ribs on the way out. Dorian, I said softly, you hurt me in a way no apology can reach. He didn't respond, but I could hear he was holding something back. Anger, guilt, or something I no longer dared to trust. But, I added, looking straight ahead at the dark road, I don't want you standing on my side just because you feel guilty. I'm not standing on your side, Dorian said. The words hit me like cold water, but he kept going, his voice like a knife trying to cut in the right place for once. I'm standing on Kaylin's side, and on the side of the truth. When I hung up, my hand was still shaking. Are you okay? Jade asked. I shook my head, then let out a thin, tired smile. No, but I'm stronger than I was. Jade smiled back. That's the one thing men like Victor never prepare for, she said. That the women they break get stronger. I went back to Kaylin. He was asleep, breathing steady. A quiet reminder that this fight wasn't just for me.
I laid my hand gently on his tiny chest. "Kalen," I whispered, "you are not going to grow up in the same darkness they used to chain me." I closed the bedroom door behind me, and I knew. Tomorrow, I was going to step into the light, even if that light burned the entire Caldwell empire to the ground.
I stood beside Kalen's crib for a long time.
Long enough for the moonlight to drift off the windowsill and leave the room wrapped in a soft, quiet darkness. His breathing stayed steady, gentle. Light like nothing in the world could ever touch his peace. But I knew better. And I knew that peace would vanish the moment I stopped fighting. When I walked back to the living room, Jade was waiting. The warm lamp lit the papers spread across the table pages that still smelled like fresh ink and cold truth. "You should rest," I told her. She shook her head. "No, Mira, tonight is the first real opening we've had." She placed a stack of documents in front of me. The audio recording, Ava's statement, hospital files, the second DNA report. "I'll file everything with the DA's office in the morning," Jade said. "But Mira, you need to be ready. This won't be simple." I sat down, my palms cold enough to cling to the wood grain.
What do you mean?
Victor has the best attorneys in Atlanta. He has money, influence, and an entire power structure built to protect him. We won't bring him down with a single file. I nodded slowly. "We need voices," Jade continued. "Yours alone won't be enough to topple a man like Victor Caldwell." I already knew that. Truth only has power when it echoes in more than one voice. The next morning, Atlanta woke up in a soft gray fog, as if the city itself was holding its breath. When I walked into Jade's office, it was busier than usual. 2 women sat by the window, one young, arms wrapped tightly around herself, the other older, eyes red as if she'd cried through the night. Jade introduced them quietly. "This is Maya, and her sister, Ava." My breath caught so sharply my chest hurt. Ava, the woman who had vanished in the shadows of Caldwell Estate, was sitting right in front of me. She looked at me with hollow eyes, but there was something bright in them too. Recognition, understanding, survival. "Mira," Ava whispered, "I heard what you've done, and if you're willing to stand up, I don't want to stay silent anymore." I took her hand. Her bones were thin, as if pain had carved away everything soft in her life. Another woman walked in, hair tied back, carrying a thick folder. "I have a story too," she said, "and if Mira is willing, I want to stand with her." 2 more women arrived before noon. One had worked inside Caldwell Corporation. One had volunteered for the family's charity foundation. I didn't need to ask what they had in common. Pain never travels alone. That afternoon, Jade officially filed our evidence with the Fulton County District Attorney. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, cameras flashing like falling stars. I thought things would move fast after that. But the truth doesn't move fast. It grinds. That evening, I got a short text. "Victor arrested, being questioned." For the first time in months, my shoulders loosened, but 3 hours later, a second text arrived, sharp as an ice needle. "Released, $1 million bond." My stomach flipped. Jade called immediately. "I told you," she said. "One file isn't enough to hold him. We need public pressure, Mira. The truth has to be seen." I knew exactly what she meant. This wasn't just mine anymore. Not a file, not a recording, not a whisper. We had to make noise, the kind that forced the world to listen. 3 days later, Atlanta woke to something it had never seen. A long line of women standing in front of the courthouse, holding signs, facing the city head on. Jade stood beside me, eyes steady. "You lead," she said. "Your story is the spark." I climbed the courthouse steps. The wind from Peachtree Street pushed against my face, warm, heavy, alive with unspoken anger. I looked down at the crowd. Different faces, different ages, different stories, but the same gaze. We will not be silent. I took a breath and spoke with the voice I thought I had lost the night Kaylin was born. My name is Mira. I once believed silence would protect me, but silence only protects monsters. Applause cracked across the concrete like a storm. I continued. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I have a son who will grow up in this city, and one day, if he asks me, Mom, why didn't you say anything? I want to be able to tell him that I did. A woman lifted a sign. Silence protects monsters. Another held one higher. Speaking is how we survive. My legs shook, not from fear, but from finally not being alone. Jade handed me a small mic. They'll listen to you, Mira. I looked straight into the news cameras, the bright lights waiting for truth. Victor Caldwell has used his power to harm women for years. We're here to say that era is over. A woman behind me began to cry. Another grabbed her hand. Voices, breaths, anger, courage, all of it rose together until the ground itself felt like it was humming. I stepped off the stairs and into the crowd, and then we moved. A long line of women, stretching like the building's own shadow, walking toward downtown. Drivers slowed. Pedestrians stopped to film. Windows opened in tall buildings. People joined us. Atlanta had never seen anything like it. A march of women who had once been silenced, now standing upright and speaking out. And me, a woman who once collapsed on a delivery table, was walking right in the middle of them. I knew Victor was watching. I knew he was sitting somewhere in that grand house, the house he used to bury women's pleas, watching a city rise against him, and I knew he finally understood. The truth wasn't one woman, it was an army. When the march ended, Jade touched my shoulder. You did incredible, Mira. I watched the crowd scatter across the streets, their signs held like flags. We're far from done, I said. And I was right. Because that night, Jade's phone rang. Her face changed again, sharply, quickly. The court accepted the new filings, she said, breath shaking. And Mira? They're calling for a special hearing. I squeezed my hands together. Victor is going to court. Jade nodded. And this time, he won't walk out so easily. I looked out at the Atlanta skyline, sinking into the dark. One truth hit me with absolute clarity. For years, we were the silent ones. Tomorrow, he will be. When I got home after the march, my voice was still trembling in my chest. My whole body felt lifted by anger that had turned into strength. But the moment I opened the door, that strength collapsed in one breath. Kaylin was lying on his side in a strange angle, his breathing raspy, his skin pale enough to chill my bones. I lifted him into my arms and touched his forehead, burning hot. Not the kind of fever you brush off. A part of me, something deep and instinctive, knew this was serious. I dialed 911 immediately. Midtown Memorial Hospital glowed like a glass fortress in the night. Nurses rushed down the hallway. Carts rolled. Monitors beeped with a warning rhythm that felt like it was counting down something precious. Dr. Patel, the one who'd been tracking Kaylin's genetic disorder, walked into the room with a grave face. It's not good, he said plainly. He needs surgery now. Babies with this type of mutation, if we don't intervene, respiratory failure is very likely. It felt like someone's hand wrapped around my throat. We'll do everything we can, he added gently. But Mira, you need to be prepared. I dropped into the chair. My palms were so tight they ached. At that moment, I understood. I could stand up against the whole world out there, but when my son hovered between life and death, I was just a mother with a breaking heart. News of the march had already spread across Atlanta, and soon so did the news about Kaylin being hospitalized. By noon, the ER door swung open. Jade rushed in, out of breath. "How much do you need?" she asked. I frowned. Need? For what? She held up her phone. On her screen was a GoFundMe page, Kaylin's smiling photo, and the donation counter jumping every few seconds like a living pulse. "Atlanta is standing with you," Jade said softly. "People are sharing your story everywhere. They're saying, if she can speak for every woman, the least we can do is help her baby breathe." My hand flew to my mouth, not because of the money, but because, for the first time, the city I thought would always look away was catching me right when I was falling apart. When the total passed what the hospital required, Patel returned. "We're taking him into surgery now." I held Kaylin as they rolled the bed. "The last time I touched him before the OR doors closed," I whispered. "You don't get to leave me. I still have to bring you out of this darkness." I stood outside the operating room for almost 3 hours. Jade didn't move from my side like a pillar, holding up someone about to collapse. When the doors finally opened, Patel pulled off his mask. "I think he's going to be okay." I didn't hear anything else, just that sentence. It made my knees buckle and tears broke free the way a dam breaks. Jade touched my back. "He's a fighter," she whispered, but the peace barely lasted 10 minutes. I had just sat down when Jade received a call from a reporter she trusted. Her face changed instantly. "Victor is trying to leave the country." I shot up, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Where?" "ATL Airport, Terminal F. He's trying to board a flight to Zurich." Everything inside me slowed. He knew. He felt the heat of the truth closing in, and he was running. Jade called Detective Hayes, the one tied to our case. I heard her speak urgently. "He's fleeing. Terminal F, Zurich. Send your people now." She hung up and looked at me. "Mira, do you want to go?" A part of me wanted to stay by my son, but another part, the part scorched in that delivery room, knew I needed to witness this. "Let's go." Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport at night was packed like a hive. Bright lights reflected off the floor like a river of steel. Jade and I ran through the crowds. Coffee smells, luggage smells. Urgency pressed thick in the air. "Terminal F is all the way down," Jade said, panting. "If he boards, we may not catch him." I ran faster. My legs burned, but something pulled me forward like a rope tied to my chest. We reached gate F12 just as a group of men in dark suits stepped in, and in the middle, Victor Caldwell. No designer suit, no powerful posture, just a wealthy man drowning in desperation. 2 federal agents stepped in front of him. "Mr. Victor Caldwell?" Their voices broke through the terminal like thunder. Victor paused, just a second, but it was long enough to see fear slice through his eyes like a blackbird darting across the sky. "I have a flight to catch," he said, trying to sound calm. "Not anymore," an agent replied. "You're under arrest for sexual assault, rape, abuse of power, and attempted flight from the country. You'll come with us." People gasped. Phones flew up, cameras flashed. Victor turned, trying to bolt, but the agent behind him grabbed his arm and twisted it back with swift precision. The click of the handcuffs hitting his wrist was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. A woman near me whispered, "Oh my God, it's really him." Jade tugged my arm. "Let's go, you've seen it." But I couldn't look away, not to revel in his humiliation, but because I wanted to burn this moment into my bones. The man who once forced me into silence had nowhere left to hide. As the agents walked him past me, his eyes brushed mine, and in that single second, I saw him understand. I was no longer the drugged girl, No longer the bride treated like property. No longer the mother shamed in a delivery room. I was the woman who lit the fire, and he was burning in the truth he tried to bury.
When we left the airport, Jade's phone kept vibrating. News alerts. Victor Caldwell arrested at ATL Airport. Community celebrates. DA confirms emergency hearing. I stared out the car window, city lights streaking past like molten metal. Jade, I said quietly, almost confessing. I'm not afraid anymore. She smiled. Silence doesn't keep us safe, Mira. It only keeps monsters alive. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I felt myself take a full breath. Tomorrow, Victor would face the light. Tomorrow, the truth would rise out of the dark. Tomorrow would be the beginning of the biggest hearing of my life. I went back to the hospital right after watching Victor being handcuffed in the middle of the airport. The cool green neon from the recovery room reflected across Kaylin's face, wrapping him in the softest light this world could offer. I placed my hand over his tiny hand. You have to wake up, baby, because everything is about to change for us. But I knew the truth. Before any rebirth happens, there has to be justice. On the morning of the trial, Atlanta felt colder than usual. Not a seasonal cold, but the kind of cold that comes from a whole city holding its breath. Reporters covered the courthouse steps, cameras pointed upward as if waiting for a monster to crawl out from beneath the marble. Jade looked at me from the car door. This won't be like any trial we've seen before, Mira. It's okay, I said quietly. I've already lived through the worst. We walked into the courtroom wide, bright and so silent it felt almost unreal. Every seat was filled. Many of the women who marched beside me were there. They looked at me with a mixture of hope and gratitude. I took my seat. Victor was escorted in a few minutes later. He didn't look like the man who smirked at me in the delivery room. Not like the man who strutted through the airport pretending he still had power. Not like the pillar of the Caldwell family. He looked like an animal cornered with nowhere else to run. The trial began with the recording. The speakers crackled once, and then Victor's voice split the room wide open. I did it so she'd remember women exist to serve men. She's just a tool. His words were sharp enough to freeze the air itself. A woman behind me covered her mouth. Ava lowered her head. Jade stared straight ahead, eyes like sharpened steel. The prosecutor stepped into the center of the room. Your Honor, this is not a case about one victim. This is a case about a chain of victims under the power of a man who believed himself untouchable. Then they called Ava. She trembled, but her voice held steady. He told me I was crazy. He told me if I spoke up, I'd disappear. And I believed him. Until today. Then came the second woman, then the third, then the fourth. Each testimony stripped another piece of armor off Victor's body. One woman said, he drugged me. I remember his cologne. I remember the ceiling spinning. I remember him saying, be good. No one will believe you anyway. No one in the room moved. No one even breathed. Then it was my turn. I stood. My hand shook only a little as I was sworn in, but the moment I looked at Victor, something inside me steadied. It felt like my soul had been waiting for this exact moment. I gave birth to my son in humiliation, I began. He stood there, watching me suffer, and he smiled. He told me the baby wasn't my husband's, and I stayed silent because he owned everything around me. I told the court everything. The night he drugged me, the basement and the cries trapped down there, Ava's necklace, the march, Kaylin in the recovery room, and then I said the words I never imagined saying in public. I survived him, but some women never got the chance to stand here like I am now. I'm speaking for them, for my son, and for anyone who was ever forced into silence. Victor lunged to his feet. She's lying! She's lying! His voice hit the walls like metal striking metal. 2 officers held him down. The judge spoke, her tone so low and firm my heartbeat paused. Mr. Caldwell,
Stay silent. Because the more you speak, the worse your sentence becomes.
After 3 long days, the jury returned. No one in the courtroom shifted. No one even cleared their throat. For 4 counts of sexual assault, 3 counts of rape, 1 count of abuse of power, and 1 count of attempted flight from the country, I saw Jade's eyes glisten right before the final words fell. We find the defendant guilty on all charges. Victor screamed, his chair crashing backward. The handcuffs snapped around his wrists, an echo so loud it seemed to seal the room shut. The judge delivered the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. And let me be clear, you are not the victim of a conspiracy. You are simply a man who created victims. That line, it hit like a hammer-splitting stone. I closed my eyes, not to cry, but to listen to the sound of those handcuffs, the sound of a hell I lived in finally locking behind me. 2 years later, Kaylin and I go to Piedmont Park most afternoons. The breeze carries the smell of lavender and peanut butter from the food carts. Kaylin runs after small birds, his laughter ringing like water moving over smooth stones. Sometimes I sit alone, watching him, and I realize I don't look over my shoulder anymore. I don't fear footsteps behind me. I don't jump at the sound of a closing door. I am free. Not because Victor is locked away, but because I am no longer the woman he tried to shape me into. Beside me, on the bench, lies the child of quiet fire. Its pages smell like new paper, but the story inside smells like old tears, hospital floors, and the march through Atlanta. Therapy groups use it to open conversations. Universities invite me to speak. Women from everywhere send letters saying thank you for speaking for them. But I know I didn't speak for anyone. I only opened the door so buried voices could follow. At the Kaylin Foundation office in Decatur, there's a room dedicated to Ava, the first woman who dared to say, I was there. There's a playroom for the kids, because healing doesn't always have to be solemn, and a fund for women who can't afford legal help. Silence once terrified me. Now it's just something I choose when I sit watching my son sleep peacefully. One afternoon, with the sun turning the park gold, Kaylin ran to me and wrapped his arms around my legs. Mom, look, I caught a yellow leaf. I laughed, a sound I once believed I'd never make again. I held him close, feeling the warmth of a world I fought to reclaim, inch by inch, tear by tear, truth by truth. And I knew. I came back from a place no one believed a mother could survive. If you've stayed with this story until now, thank you. Tell me which city you're watching from. And if this story touched you, hit like and subscribe so we can keep sharing journeys where truth, no matter how painful, always finds its way to set us free.